Hello and welcome to Gaming Forever, news, reviews and interviews. Today I am with Myroid, the sole developer of Zerans Folly. Hello there. So, it's a pretty complicated plot from what I can tell from playing it, so how would you describe what Zerans Folly is all about?
I guess we're just gonna start right into that, but...
Sorry!
That's alright. Alright, so, basically from a high level, it's a warrior gets his memory back. That's a story of 1,000 stories, right? But, like anything else, the details make it interesting. So the thing about Zerans Folly is that, I guess what makes this adventure is different. You go to dungeons, you go to look for treasure and artifacts and stuff like this. Along the way you'll meet incestuous goblins, a murderous gravedigger, a pompous piece of broccoli, stuff like that. And the thing of it is that, it has this cute cartoony aesthetic, and the story is lighthearted to go along with it for the most part, but there's some little parts in there. It touches on some mature themes with some very dark. I think so. You don't really see that all that often.
No, it's certainly one of a kind. What the incest and all. There has been a couple of times when I've been watching streams and playing it myself where I had to do a stop take and go, hang on, wait, what?
And that's the thing of it too. Is just it's just all that stuff. Even though it's kind of out there and kind of shocking a little bit, that's the stuff that people remember and that's the stuff that people react to. So that's what really makes the game interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely memorable in that regard, and it is rather charming as well. Whereas I think in other mediums it might be, a bit too ham-fisted or it's so out there, but it actually really works in a very charming way. It's a nice.
Yeah, one of the things I definitely wanted to go in was not take a ham-fisted approach to everything and just kind of subtle about it. Obviously there's some blatant things in there, but it's handled in I like to think, a classic way.
Yeah, so you're the sole developer. Solo Zerans Folly. That's a big undertaking, man. It's a pretty big game. What's been the biggest challenge so far with all these different things?
I've been doing most of this stuff for years, so really the biggest challenge is just not quitting. It's because it's hard to work on one thing for over 4 years, It's, you get will people even care about this? And it's just when you're doing a creative effort for so long, it's just you start to doubt yourself, you start to get bored, you get delays, whatever, but it's just like any other long-term goal, as long as you don't quit, eventually you get there. You just gotta stay disciplined.
True. It's just weird when it comes to one person developer things, because there's the creative side of game development, which is the art and the score and stuff, and it's all of which is bang on. And there's also the stuff like the programming, making sure that play testing, how things control and everything like that. That must have been a pain in the ass, to be frank.
Well, it does have the benefit of being the 7th or 8th iteration of a game I've been remaking for the past 10 years. It started with Millie, the whole Millie Megavolt series was just the same game over and over, but with slight iterations each time. With Millie 7, the one that set it apart from the last one is that it has a new physics engine, which is the one that Zerans Folly is based on. And Millie still had all the directional attacks and stuff, but this new physics engine, now you can run on walls, it has more momentum, stuff like that. It's a lot more fun to just even move around. So, it's a lot of fun. So, it wasn't necessarily building a thing just from nothing, but it's, I guess, to use a not really relevant thing, standing on the shoulders of not really giants.
It's... How many games did you say that you did already?
If you count the little not Game Maker, but Games Factory, it's kind of like Game Maker. Back in I've been making games since the early 2000s.
Wow.
So I've been at this a while. So I made 3 longer-ish platformer games called Mecha Man. Super popular. But I made 3 of those, and then for around 2006 I got into Flash, and I released Millie 1 in 2007 February. So since then I've made 7 installments of the Millie Megavolt series. I made a couple mini games, little spin-offs like Millie Megavolt Arena and then Turbo's Gel Blast. I also made another Flash game Spaz Jetter, which was a terrible, terrible Mega Man ripoff, which is actually what Marco came from.
Like you said, like there were slightly smaller games and stuff. How different was it? You know, like apart from using the same engine, how different was the development from Zerans Folly, from one of the Mecha Mans or the?
Well, I mean, from Millie. So Millie, all those were built in Flash, and Zerans Folly was made with C++ and SFML. So for people who don't really know what any of those mean, it's like going from GameMaker or Unity to just coding it from scratch.
Damn.
And that's a lot. I mean, really, it's not that much different. It's just you have to do some of the lower level stuff yourself that's not done for you. Like for Unity or whatever, you don't have to worry about coding the sound engine or loading assets or loading in levels or anything like that. It's just there's just some stuff that's taken care of for you, and really, the bulk of development time was just creating content and creating assets, which it doesn't really matter what you use what you use for your engine. It's just part of what we do regardless.
Speaking of like the assets and stuff, there's a whole lot of lore when it comes to Zerans Folly. Just the random little throwaway things about like ancient history and all these random places that you haven't met yet, and these NPCs, just one random NPC in the corner of the map and all this. It's a pretty big world that you've managed to build. Do you have much experience with world building, like tabletop games or anything like that? Because it's immense.
Not really. I mean, I used to play D&D a little bit with my friends, but I mean, I've been writing comics forever. But I mean, as far as actually world building goes, this is probably the most I've ever done. I mean, it takes place in the same universe as Millie Megavolt and Spaz Jetter. It's all the same thing, and there's some stuff that was from those previous games in this, like the Belly Cutters. It's the Thieves Guild in the game. That was from Millie Megavolt 6. Millie, Lance, and Anne, which we'll talk about later, they're both from the Millie Megavolt series, obviously. But for the most part, I mean, all the locations in the game are new. There's no repeats. A lot of the races are new, like especially all of Lone's friends. So I mean, most of this is just new.
Speaking of like Anne and Lance and all that, I've noticed that there was a lot of care and attention given to the NPCs. Like you said, like each one's kind of memorable in their own way, all the different races, and with the kind of more brash ones like the incestuous goblins, they're not like a one-note joke and that's it. They have a lot to say, and it's not just quest-driven statements. What really inspired you to do this, especially since it was difficult to implement, and it's on this kind of scale, and it's kind of rare to see nowadays?
Well, I mean, one of my favorite things to do in RPGs is talk to NPCs. I love running around and talking to them, but, I mean, usually in games, it's, like you said, there's not a lot of attention given to them, so you'll run up to them, one of them says, like, I'm going to the store today. Are ya? Like, so, I mean, yeah, so it's like, for me, for my approach to the NPCs, I mean, there's not a whole lot of them. There's not a lot of, I mean, there's like tertiary characters to support what's the main event that's going on, but I mean, there's a few random NPCs, but my approach to them is, they need to say something interesting or tell a joke about something that's immediately happening now, like what's relevant to the situation, because, like, say, if you went to Ixolix or one of the other cities, and like they don't talk about the history that much, if at all. It's just, you're in this city, and I don't care about the history because that has nothing to do with the game. Like what's going on now, like say in Mokumo'o, there's a pink mo'o there. Mo'os are like lizards. In Hawaiian lore, they're dragons. But anyway, well, there's a pink lizard there named Coral Kane. And he's in it. He's just a random NPC. His little story is that he's defensive about being pink because he's made fun of it for him. Like he even wears brown and black clothing to tone down the pinkness of his skin. And when you talk to him, he just rants on about how pink is cool and how it's a manly color. And then at the end, he just says sorry. He just really hates parties. That's another. He's touchy because he hates parties. But yeah, that's another approach to writing for the NPCs too that I have, is that when you talk to them, they usually start with one thing, but I like to end on another. So like like with that example with Coral Kane, he starts talking about being pink, but then it ends with him hating parties. And you can see that in a lot of the other NPCs too. But going back to what I said about NPCs saying interesting things, it's just like, you know, you want to, like, the history is boring and irrelevant, so it's like, what's going on now? Lore for the sake of it is lame. So it's like, there's a blue bitch here with titties, you know, standing here. Tell me about her. You're a thief. Tell me about that. Why are you a dog person? Why is everyone acting so weird about Abby? Did you really fuck your sister? Why does Lydia talk like that when all of you sound like bumpkins? You know, interesting stuff that's relevant here and now that's actually going on in the game. That you might actually care about.
It's just, so actually, like, I did have a question about the sense of humour. I've been bouncing around the question, sorry about that. But with the sense of humour, obviously, you being a lone developer, it's your sense of humour. Did you find you had to tone it down at any point, or is that just you, no filter?
I made a specific point not to filter myself, because, I mean, for the longest time, it's like, one of the reasons people have played my games is because they enjoy the humor. So, why would you filter out and reduce what people are there for, you know?
Yeah, and that's what's keeping me driving on, just to see what happens next, honestly, with these characters. So, from what I've seen, there's this whole kind of like, there's like an ensemble of characters as opposed to just focusing on lone, and it's really nice, that kind of diversity, not just because of the diversity in characters, but because of the gameplay elements as well. They all control slightly differently. It might be sacrilege to ask, but which PC is your favourite?
This was actually a really hard one. I had to think about it a while, and I guess I kind of like broke it up into two things. As far as like personality goes, I don't really have a clear favorite because they're all, you know, fun in their own way. You know, Lone's a strong guy. He's silent, but he's, you know, he has this sweet innocence to him. Mm-hmm. Lydia's just adorable. Lisa's sarcastic and fun, and Abby's just a sweetheart. So it's like, you know, they're all fun in their own way. But I mean, as far as gameplay-wise goes, or, you know, as far as actually like playing, I'd have to say Lisa for general stuff, just because, you know, her talents or her abilities make it easy to get around. She has a lot of vertical ability, a lot of horizontal mobility, and the reach on her spear is just great for killing enemies. But Abby is actually more fun in some ways because, you know, she's not as good as killing people because she doesn't have as good a reach or whatever. But, you know, she's much faster than Lisa. So it's, if you're good at the game, then it's, you know, you just blaze right through it as Abby. But then, of course, Lydia is the de facto boss killer because she has her range attacks, and Lone is good basically anything because, you know, he's kind of the middle ground. He has this tornado ability, which he's invincible during. So, you know, if you're having trouble in there, you can, like with lots of baddies shooting fireballs at you, just use tornado and take them out. Very
middle ground answer, no favourites.
Yeah, I know, but...
to be fair, I couldn't pick one.
Okay, I was about to ask you next. I mean, I've watched some streams too, and I mean, people have their own favorites, like, and it's all over the board, which I think speaks to how appealing they are. That's a good thing. I mean, some people like Lydia, some like Abby, just because, you know, she's cute or whatever, and then some people like Lisa. It's all good.
I have to say, it must be a testament to your writing, the matter of fact that, you know, they're so well thought out that people can't pick a favourite.
Or that there's something good in all of them so that people have a favourite. There's no, like, standout, like, oh, this character's boring or anything like that, you know?
So, I noticed as well, like we were saying about the different gameplay styles, there are sections where it's designed to go back over, especially like after you get Lydia, you can go onto the higher platforms because of the double jump and what have you. Did that affect like how you changed, how you approached level design? I imagine that could be quite difficult to think of a level that you're going back over. How do you keep it interesting?
Well, I mean, you can play as any of the characters at any time. So the philosophy I had was to keep the levels character agnostic, so you can get through them with any of them. Getting through the levels, you can get through as any of them, because all of them have the same core abilities. I mean, they can all run and jump, of course. They can all get within a specific reasonable height. All of them have their focus attacks. They all have vertical breakers and horizontal breakers, which allows them to break, breakable floors or breakable walls to get through them. Every character can do that. So there's not going to be a section where you can't reasonably do it with a specific character if you don't want to. But I think and that might sound kind of samey, but I think what really separates them and highlights the differences between them is the enemies. For example, like buzzflies, they're the things that fly up and down and shoot bullets. So since they move really quickly, it's kind of hard to hit them with Lydia's mana bombs. So maybe it's a lot easier to hit them with Lone's melee attacks or something like that. Or say for like wisps, Lisa is really great for that because her charge attack is a weapon attack, so she doesn't get hurt when she attacks like flaming enemies and stuff like that. And then Lone's dash makes it easy to get around places quickly, and it does the most damage in the game. It does 3 normal hits worth of damage, so you can kill things like water gels in one hit. So while each of the characters has some slight differences and they have a lot of the same abilities, when it comes to dealing with enemies, that really shines a spotlight on how they play.
Nice. Yeah, I was just thinking mainly for platforming, but it's true, a matter of fact, like how it differs with the enemies. Another thing I noticed, some of the enemies will pop up in different areas, but they will look slightly different based on the kind of context of the area. So yes. It was like that Windy Gale? I've forgotten the bloody name of it. I was playing it earlier.
Oh, Gale's Bluff.
That's the one. Sorry. What do you call it? Like, they're slightly different from when they were in the caves and in Tomb of... Yeah. So, how, when it came to, like, designing all these areas that are separate, but still feel connected in the same kind of world, how did you find having that kind of continuity? Sorry.
Well, I think what really helps is that the game is split up into rooms instead of one large continuous area that you explore. So having that break between rooms kind of gives your mind fills in the gaps, sort of thing. So when you move from, say, Halden which is a bright, sunny town, green trees and all that, to Dead Man's Glade, which is, this haunted kind of dark forest sort of area. You're not moving directly. There's a break in there, so your mind kind of fills in the gaps. Like, oh, I must have traveled some distance, so now I'm in this new place, and it makes sense.
I like the way that it's all kind of spread out, because then you see the way that all the different areas connect as well. That's good. So yes, as you know, this is Gaming Forever. So of course we're going to ask about the fandom-specific questions, especially since it seems that some of the Fairy and Anthro fans seem to have taken a liking to your game.
Yeah.
Did you consider the furry fandom at all during the design process? Was Annie perhaps a little nod to us? It's totally cool she is, because she's adorable.
Well, I mean, as far as the fandom goes, I didn't consider them during the game or during development because I honestly don't think the game is a furry game. Because to me, I'm not a furry, but it's like, and to me as an outsider, a furry game has the prerequisite of every character being an animal character. Like, say, Dust and Elysian Tail or Freedom Planet, stuff like that. But obviously you have Lydia, who's a rat girl, and Lisa, who's a lizard, and Jeezel, who's a weasel person. You have all these anthro characters, but you also have elves and orcs and all this other stuff in there too. So it's kind of like an even mix. And really, in games, you don't see that much. I mean, there's either all the characters are animals, none of them are, or maybe there's like a token one here that you don't really see like an even mix. I mean, it makes sense. I can see the appeal there, and I appreciate the interest. So, but moving on to Anne. Anne is kind of a long story. So she's, like I mentioned before, she's been in a few games I've made, and obviously before that she's been human. And honestly, she was kind of a boring character. She was obviously kind of this mad scientist, kind of standoffish, frankly kind of a bitch character. and she just wasn't that interesting. But, you know, I brought her back with Millie and Lance as just, you know, a throwback to my old games. I just had the random idea one day of making her a Knoll, and suddenly it made complete sense to her character. It felt like it was the missing piece to who she was. Because as soon as she had that part, it's like, well, of course she would do something like that. She's Anne. You know, she's crazy. So instead of like being this just kind of bland character, now she's like this energetic dork who really likes being a Knoll, and you know, it's just something crazy and sciencey she would do. So I think it gave her some more depth and made her more interesting. But however, the fandom did have a little bit of impact on her, because when I found out that there was interest, when I looked at her, you know, before her, you know, she was a little more human looking before. Like, she had kind of just like a pink nose, and she had the ears and the tail, but aside from that, she still looked pretty human. So I kind of did some research to make out of, you know, because I'm not too familiar with it, so I did some research on how to make her look more furry. And basically what I came away from it was, you know, give her two-tone fur. You know, so you can kind of see that reflected how she has kind of like brown fur around her face, but like around her mouth, it's more whitish. So she has that kind of two-tone color, and I think it actually made her look a lot. It made her look a lot better, because I didn't like her color scheme exactly before, but I think it really improved her look a lot.
Nice. Yeah, I did notice with the two-tone fur. Regarding like the furry fandom, you know, it's not a furry game. It's not specifically a furry game. Although I do have to say I have noticed a correlation between furries and platformers and action platformers, so to speak. I don't know why, but just
Sonic, obviously.
It's that damn hedgehog again.
Bubsy and, you know, just all the cute animal platformer characters from 20 years ago, you know?
True that. Okay, so honestly, this game is so goddamn impressive. Like, I can't get over the fact that you did this all yourself as well. I know that you're still doing patches for it, aren't you? Like new content and stuff.
Yes, there's enough updates slated for about a year of updates. So basically what I'm adding, I just added, or Anne was added to the game last week as a playable character. She's only available in the Steam version. Right on Steam now. Because there's also a free version online, you can do it, whatever. But anyway, yeah, so Anne was just added. She's a new playable character here. I'm also going to add another playable character who's in development now called Marco. He has a gun, he shoots things, he's cool. But aside from that, he's probably the last character, unless I come up with something else, he's basically the last character that's going in the game as playable character. But aside from that, some of the stuff to come is basically a bunch of dungeons where I'm going to try out some new things that haven't been seen in the game yet, and just having fun with it and just trying new things. So hopefully people will like it.
Nice. So that's what's next for Zerans Folly, but what's next for you? What are you going to work on next?
Well, the problem with games is that it's a lot of goddamn work.
Yes.
So, I mean, and after spending like 4.5 years on this, I don't know if I would have the patience and wherewithal to just start all over again on something new. But, I mean, I don't know, I might reuse the engine to do something else, I might just keep making updates to it forever, I don't know. But the thing is that, you know, after I've spent so much time working so hard creating, I've grown to love it a little more than I hate it. So, I'm definitely going to be, no matter what happens, I'm going to be doing something. I'll be creating something. I don't know if it'll be another game, I don't know what it'll be, but I'll definitely keep doing something.
I'm so happy to hear that, because, man, this is fantastic. So, Zerans Folly is available on Steam. You have a shareware version out, if I remember rightly? Or you were going to put one out? Yeah. Yes,
there's a free version available on the website, zeransfolly.com. You can go there. There's a thing at the top, download free version. But so the difference between the two versions is that the free version is basically the version of the game at release. And it won't be updated or anything. So it doesn't have Anne, it won't have Marco, it won't have any of the new updates. But it's free, so you know, if you want to try out the game, you can try it. But the Steam version has Marco. It has Bard mode, which makes the game a little easier for people who just want to experience the story. And it'll have all the future updates. So, and you know, it's not expensive. It's $10. You know, come on.
You're getting a lot of content for it, and trust me, you need Bard mode. I need Bard mode. I wouldn't have stood a chance without it. So I would suggest going forever that you do pick it up. I'm not being paid or whatever to say it. Fantastic, great game. Myroid, you've been absolutely fantastic. This game is fantastic, you're fantastic, the score's fantastic, the gameplay's fantastic, it's all fantastic, man. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Games Forever, and I'll catch you on the next time. Take care.